On December 16, 1971, the Indo-Pak War formally concluded. The instrument of surrender was signed, and for the public, the conflict had reached a definitive end. But for 12 Indian Air Force pilots housed in a Rawalpindi prison camp, the war dragged on. Diplomatic repatriation formalities stalled entirely, leaving them trapped in hostile territory well into 1972. Without a timeline for release, the men faced an indefinite period of isolation. The psychological weight of open-ended captivity began to set in as weeks turned into months. These captives were highly trained aviators, operating frontline strike aircraft like the Sukhoi Su-7. As high-value prisoners, their release was politically complicated. When standard military captivity stretches into a diplomatic stalemate, the dynamics change. Recognizing that external rescue was unlikely, the pilots realized they had to orchestrate their own extraction. Flight Lieutenant Dilip Parulkar had anticipated this exact scenario. Over dinner with his commanding officer in 1968, Parulkar had made a promise. If he were ever shot down and captured, he would escape. He decided to make good on that vow. Parulkar recruited 2 fellow pilots, Flight Lieutenant MS Grewal and Flying Officer Harish Sinhji, to coordinate a breakout. This topographic map highlights the massive geographical challenge facing them, a 55-kilometer gap between the Rawalpindi prison and the Torkham border crossing, running directly through heavily populated, hostile terrain. Surviving that distance required a meticulously engineered physical breach and the internal fabrication of reliable field equipment before they could even step foot outside. This 3D schematic of the prison camp reveals why they secured a transfer to Cell 4. This specific room bordered a narrow, poorly monitored alleyway and sat close to the prison's outer perimeter wall, offering a critical structural blind spot. For months, they worked in near darkness. Using stolen table knives and a pair of scissors, they painstakingly scraped the sandy mortar out from between the bricks of an 18-inch thick masonry wall. To avoid detection during daily inspections, they established a strict concealment protocol. A draped bed hid the loosened bricks and the accumulating dust from the camp sweeper. To solve their navigation problem, Squadron Leader Kamat dismantled a standard ballpoint pen to build a covert compass. He inserted a sewing needle, magnetized using scavenged transistor batteries. Balanced on a hollowed-out press button, the needle freely rotated to indicate magnetic north. The rest of their logistics came from repurposed military gear. Parachute canopy fabric was stitched into durable haversacks, while the heavy-duty rubber bladders from a pilot's G-suit were cut out to serve as water bags. By fabricating functional navigation and survival tools from prison debris, the 3 men had effectively rebuilt the specialized kit of an operational pilot while still inside the walls of the camp. On the night of August 12, 1972, they executed the breach. The men removed the loosened bricks and slid through the jagged hole into the alleyway, slipping past the guards and into the city. Back in Cell 4, a fellow prisoner arranged pillows beneath their blankets. When the morning guard peeked in, the dummy figures gave the illusion that all the men were still asleep. As they fled, they deliberately dropped a map detailing a route toward the Uri Punch sector. If camp security found it, the search parties would be funneled in the exact opposite direction of their actual destination. These layers of physical and psychological misdirection were designed to stall the search parties, buying the trio enough time to exit the Rawalpindi district and begin the long journey toward the border. The first phase worked smoothly. Traveling by bus and on foot, disguised in tailored Pathan suits, they reached Landi Khana, a town sitting a mere 5 miles short of the Afghan border. Needing to cover the final stretch, they approached a local Tehsildar's clerk and asked for directions to the Landi Khana railway station. This map comparison illustrates their fatal error. The pilots were navigating using an old 1933 railway map, completely unaware that the British had permanently closed the Landi Khana station in 1932. Asking for a transit hub that hadn't existed in 40 years shattered their disguise. In a region where locals knew every functioning road and rail line, the out-of-date strategic intelligence immediately flagged them as outsiders. Assuming they were Bengali refugees attempting to flee the country, the clerk had them detained. The trio was brought before the local Tehsildar for interrogation. Facing imminent transfer back to military intelligence, Parulkar played one final bluff. He claimed they were Pakistani Air Forcemen on leave who had gotten lost and demanded the right to call the PAF camp commandant in Peshawar. The Tehsildar relented. Once connected, Parulkar spoke in rapid, high-level English, a language the local guards couldn't follow. He revealed their true identities as Indian pilots to the Pakistani officer, leveraging strict military protocol to ensure they were transferred safely into official custody rather than left to the local militia. They were returned to captivity, but their actions forced international recognition of their status. In December 1972, the pilots were formally repatriated, crossing the Wagah-Attari border to a hero's welcome. The 1972 breakout proved that even within a high-security cell, a pilot's training doesn't stop. But it also proved that the most precise engineering is useless if the intelligence behind it is 40 years out of date. If you found this declassification of history fascinating, please subscribe, like, and share.